Hello, I am Paul. As you know, this is Liz. We are the worst team up ever, coming to you from the Comic Crush. As always, this is actually our final episode for this particular show, as I'm sure you guys have noticed, because we've reached the end of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So there's going to be a lot to talk about in this episode. We are going to try and get through it as quickly as possible. Liz, how are you?
Doing all right.
Good, good. Excited to talk about this episode?
Very excited.
Okay. I'm probably just going to get out of the way on this one, Liz, and let you just, go for it, because I know you're probably going to have a lot more to say on this one than I am. Before we start, though, I do just want to say, please like, share, and subscribe. You can click the subscribe button. That helps us out a ton if you do that. And please do watch the show from beginning to end, because that also helps us. And if you really fancy it, guys, take a look at the Patreon, because the Patreon is great. With zero humility whatsoever. But we've got a really good Patreon, and it helps us keep going, helps us get paid, and helps us kind of, read more comics and talk about more comics and comic-related film and TV. So if you want to help us do that, please do subscribe and check out the Patreon. We also have a web store on thecomiccrush.com, which has loads of great comics. There's some fantastic comic sets in there at the moment, and more going in this coming week. So please do check that out, because every purchase, again, just helps us out and helps us keep going. We've got a bunch of new subscribers. So I do want to say hello quickly to Tony Van Ras, Hannah Mullane, Varsas, Adam James Smith, Shadowhawks Gaming, and Peter DeRosa, who left us a comment. Thank you very much for subscribing, by the way, guys. Peter left us a comment last week, basically saying, let's see if I can bring it up here. Peter said, this show has lost me. I assume that he's talking about Falcon and the Winter Soldier, not our particular show. Let's hope. This show has lost me. I don't find it all that exciting. I find it bogged down and mired in politics, like so much entertainment these days. Shame. And Baron Zemo, the best character on the show, was completely wasted and underutilized. Now, that kind of ties in with a lot of what went on this week. So we're at the final episode now. Peter, thank you very much for commenting. I'm sorry that you're not finding the show, at least the Falcon and Winter Soldier show, to your liking. Hopefully you'll have a better time with Loki when that comes on. Maybe you enjoyed WandaVision a bit more. I don't know. Please drop us a line and let us know. But thanks very much for commenting. This does kind of lead to some interesting points that came out this week's show, and some interesting discussion that's gone on online. I mean, we're right at the end now, Liz. The Flag Smashers make their big move against the GRC. We finally see Sam in the new Cap costume. Bucky and Sam working together, but we've also got John Walker on his way, also, aiming to be Cap. There's a lot of characters.
There's a lot of balls in the air, basically, for sure. Absolutely. There's just a lot that needs to get tied up in, what was actually comparatively like a shorter episode for the show. It's a very jam-packed episode.
Sure.
And going back to Peter's comment, it is kind of a lot of front page issues, going on in this show. And if you kind of don't, want that, to be sort of, really at the forefront of, what is still like a, superhero comics TV show, it is, it's unavoidable in this particular show, that stuff is going to be very in your face. and sometimes really effectively and sometimes in kind of a ham-fisted way, in my opinion. So I can understand if that were to put you off, if you just want to kind of watch like a fun superhero action thing, and maybe it doesn't align with your personal political views. You might not enjoy this series as much. The Captain America films historically have always dealt with political issues because it's that character. And that's the character where you kind of get to explore those issues because of what he is meant to represent. So I think it's cool that they can talk politics, and tell, sort of explore things that people are talking about, relevant stuff that's going on in the world through the lens of the MCU. But did they always do it really effectively? Could it be off-putting, if you don't share some of those viewpoints? Yes, I understand that. So, and and also, Peter, I'm with you on Zemo. I wanted more Zemo, but that said, we'll talk about him as things go on.
I think we got the right amount of Zemo for me for this show. Going to the political side of things, okay, yes, the show, as you quite accurately pointed out, Liz, it is front page issues. However, that is also very present in comics today. Now, you could argue that it hasn't always been present in comics. I would argue that it probably has, but it's perhaps hasn't been dealt with as directly. I would say sometimes, and I'm not saying this show in particular, we'll get to my feelings on this episode shortly, but I would say sometimes some of this stuff can be handled with a lack of subtlety and, not much use of metaphor and things like that, just in a very direct way. And I mean, I have an issue with this. Art for me is is a mirror, not a telescope. It's meant to show you how you are living rather than how to live. And certainly art can be a place that's full of ideas on how to approach life and things like that. But I don't think you should ever be taking your lifestyle choices from comics or from films necessarily, or from books. Or I think, you kind of got to take your choices from the environment around you, from your education, things like that. That said, I think that writers are very savvy. If you kind of hit upon certain issues, you're going to get more conversation about the thing you're writing about. And also, you can't ignore the fact that writers, directors, the creative teams behind the comics and the shows obviously want to deal with this stuff. I think part of the problem is, and it goes back to what I was saying a moment ago, that they shouldn't feel like it's their job to provide answers. I think it's their job to at least ask the questions. They don't have to provide answers. Again, if you're looking to art for the answers, you may be looking in the wrong place. And that's just my opinion. I'm happy to have people sort of shout at me in the comments or on social media about it and stuff. But I think you shouldn't necessarily be looking at art for the answers. But it should raise the questions at least. And I think this show has raised a lot of the questions. In terms of the episode itself, plenty of stuff going on, plenty of action. I kind of felt, again, we're back in the realms of episode 3 for me. Just very choppy, not much kind of decent pacing going on, and it actually did annoy me whilst watching the episode. I take it you didn't feel that way, that you kind of just, you're all in with this and you were kind of fine with it.
You take it incorrectly this time, Paul.
Really? Okay.
I really didn't feel that way about episode 3. If I'm like looking back, I think episode 3 was probably my favorite episode. But this issue, episode rather. Now I enjoyed it very much, but I would actually agree with you in that it had pacing issues as an episode unto itself. As the and what they've kind of the showrunners have described this series as is like a 6-hour long movie. As the ending, like the big crescendo to a 6-hour long movie, I think it makes sense and it works fine. And if you watch the whole thing back to back, which I surely will, probably right after we finish recording this, I think it will probably
way
work
too much time on your hands.
Time well spent, Paul. Time well spent. But yeah, I think, if you look at it as, the sort of last act to a larger story, I think the pacing will work fine. As an episode on its own, I think it was, it was very top heavy with the action. And then, it kind of had this like, Lord of the Rings 3-esque sort of like ending where it just kind of like slowed down. And just when you thought it was going to end, there was like another story that needed to be wrapped up. There were a lot of stories that needed to be wrapped up, and you still needed like your big face off with the Flag Smashers and all that. So it had a lot of heavy lifting to do in terms of wrapping up the story. And sometimes it didn't work for me as well as past episodes have done, because it was just kind of so loaded with action in the front half, and then it kind of just slowed right down. I had like pacing issues, but that said, pretty much everything that happened in the episode was what needed to happen to wrap the story up. And so I did feel that we got a satisfying ending to the story, but if you're critiquing it just as an episode, it had some issues.
Plot-wise, definitely a satisfying ending to the story. Emotionally and structurally, not so much. I felt we were very much back in the realm of the Netflix shows, because this was exactly the problem I had with series 1 of Luke Cage, where the ending was you had the big fight, and then you had something like 20 or 25 minutes of wrap-up scenes, and it was just like, look, this is bad pacing. This is really, really bad. And there's nothing wrong with the scenes by and of themselves. That's the thing. They're well written, but it's just their placement and kind of there is something in film and TV where you should try and bring together time, place, and action in a satisfying way. And I don't feel they managed to do that. Obviously, you can't have a Senate hearing to bring back Sharon Carr in the middle of an action scene. Like I get that, but I think there would have been hope there would have been a more satisfying way to do it. And I don't know. I'm really annoyed that Batroc seems to be dead. Like that really. Really aggravating.
That was R.I.P. We'll miss you. I'm bummed because I mean, he's a cool character, and like one of the most memorable fight scenes of any of the Marvel films was that fight between him and Steve Rogers on the ship in Winter Soldier.
There's actually been a load of like things online. Like there was one article. I can't remember what. I'm not even going to say the name of the website. I can't remember what website it was. But it actually really aggravated because they were like, "Oh, it's time to admit that Sam Wilson can't fight," and it's just what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Well, I mean,
I think he did just fine.
And Batroc, I think, was probably less satisfying than the one between him and Steve, unfortunately, because it felt kind of rushed, and it basically just didn't utilize either of their kind of like athleticism to the degree that you know, like you really got to see you know, what an amazing you know, sort of acrobat George St. Pierre, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly.
I believe that's
and you know, this didn't really make the most of that. And also, this is a quibble, but okay, so Sam like heroically throws the shield with all his might, and Batroc throws an office chair, and seemingly they are equally powerful weapons. You know, so I was just like,
that's true nerdism, Liz. I mean, you obviously haven't been to a Staples while you've been back home. That's for sure. You don't know how sturdy those office chairs are. But I mean, like, I've got to say, for me, that the real nerdy quibble for me was I don't like the new costume. Like, I really don't like it. I wish they'd have kind of done
don't like the costume.
Yeah, I understand it's fairly comics accurate.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's you know, it's been kind of a divisive thing. Like, you know, some people love it, some people don't love it. What don't you love about it?
I just don't like the look of it. I just don't like that weird headpiece that seems to come up from the neck and then around the eyes, and like I really don't like it. It's just the design of it. I kind of wish they'd given him a closer version of the Cap costume, like the dark blue and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it does look like his comics costume.
Yeah.
And you know, I was like really, you know, hoping he would have the wings as part of the costume, and he did. You know, which of course, like, you know, I thought that looked great. I thought that was like perfect. You know, it's really like it is kind of like, you know, just his Falcon costume, but reimagined, you know, with the stars and stripes. So I liked it, but do I think maybe, you know, they could polish it up a little? I don't know. Maybe when they come back with the film. Yeah, I mean, how many costume changes has Steve had? Like loads.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be shocked if they kind of refined it for like Captain
I really hated the first Cap costume. Like I love the one that's in Winter Soldier. But I hate the first Cap costume. But there you go. I mean, they're quibbles, they're nerdy quibbles. I'm not gonna, you know, I don't think I can sit here and go, well, this was rubbish because the costume looks rubbish, because like I hate that sort of attitude. I mean, the reveal about Sharon, I'm really pleased. I was kind of on it there.
I mean, like, you and like most of the internet, though, it's like I do. So this is like, you know, a little bit of, you know, it's one of my issues, and it doesn't bother me that much. Like, I don't really mind that it was fairly obvious that Sharon was going to be the power broker. You know, like somebody online, I can't remember if it was in an article or on Twitter or something, but somebody described it as like being similar to Batman Hush, in like there was nobody else it could have been. It's like world's most obvious bad guy, like, you know, being used as like a big reveal later. You know, in a similar way, in fact, to Agnes / Agatha in WandaVision. It's like you knew it was going to be her the whole time, but like with WandaVision, I still think it was very satisfying. With Sharon, it's satisfying, but I would like a little more information. You know, I would have liked to see.
There's some flashbacks that need to happen in whatever the next show is going to be, I think. Like someone pointed out, I can't remember who this is, so I'm really sorry to the person who pointed this out to me, for not kind of giving you a proper shout out. I apologize. It's just because of my faulty old man's memory. They said that Zemo had met the power broker, and he said there's always been a power broker in Madripoor, and he describes him as a he, I believe, back in like episode 3.
I think Zemo does.
But my feeling is that it's kind of whoever kind of comes in and stakes their claim and maybe ousts the power broker before becomes the power broker. I was hoping that it was going to be some kind of sleight of hand, and it's just a way to kind of keep control of the more sort of criminal elements that have developed since the snap and then the blip. Because, you know, during that time, it would have been impossible to keep track of all these weapons and alien artifacts and things. But it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. You know, it looks like...
Not. I mean, you know, so I think what we've really been trying to figure out, you know, as far as like, okay, not so much like, is Sharon the power broker? Because I think like there were a few other contenders, like the introduction of Val made it seem like it could be possible that it could be her, but there was really no other character it could have been. Like, you know, I mean, I think Val wouldn't have really worked as a satisfying reveal because she kind of just showed up for like a minute in the episode before. So, you know, all signs pointed to Sharon, like throughout the series, like everything kind of telegraphed it being Sharon, you know, down to like the internet got really nitpicky and pointed out the fact that, that Sharon was like one of the only characters who didn't have an iPhone. And apparently one of the things about, that, you know, Apple allowing, characters to use, iPhones is that only the heroic characters are allowed to use them, and any villain isn't allowed to use an iPhone. So Sharon did not have an iPhone, and somebody, of course, walked onto that.
See, like,
I mean, yeah, I mean, you know, which of course, like, I love people on the internet. Everyone's a detective, and they're really good detectives.
Love.
And I mean, you know, you just look back at all of her actions, like every, you know, all of the fight scenes, whenever she was fighting, she was like brutally killing people. Like the death of the, the guy she bumped into during this episode was like particularly gruesome, you know, when she stuck that, that thing that released the mercury, you know, onto his back. Like, you know, I mean, he was like sizzling. You know, so I mean, you know, you kind of, you know, you got the idea, like, okay, you know, like this is not like heroic behavior here, even when it seemed like she was working with Sam, Bucky, and Zemo. That fight in the warehouse area, like she was just like killing guys really brutally left and right.
And of course now she's kind of back in the bosom of the government and, you know, returning to Agent 13, but it was just like, no, this is going to be a bad choice. So, I mean, I'm really curious to see where they go with that. I mean, if they do move on to a second series of this, like, I hope that she will kind of become the nemesis in a way. Like, I would like to see.
I mean, I actually think it's like a really kind of cool twist for her character. You know, I mean, it's such a departure from the character in the comics. I mean, you know, that it kind of opens her up to become like a really interesting character, because I have to say, you know, looking back, she's one of the most underserved characters in the MCU. Really, she was kind of given nothing to do except be this, like, you know, sort of blonde, sort of, you know, Girl Scoutish character in Winter Soldier and Civil War. And yeah, I mean, she really wasn't given much to work with. She wasn't given much of a personality. She kind of just existed to, you know, give Steve a smooch, help them out, and, you know, then end up like on this really, you know, abandoned by everyone, including Steve. You know, like when you think, it's like, why is she so bitter? It's like, okay, because she put everything on the line to help them, and then nobody thought to try, like, you know, sort her out and get her back in the good graces of the American government. She was just left out on her own. So then Steve could go off and like romance her, like, you know, dead great aunt in the past.
Well, I mean, I'm not reducing her motivation down to that man done me wrong, because I think that kind of sells her short a bit, Liz.
Well, no, I think they were selling her short as, you know, as just a love interest, and now they've given her something more interesting to do. So,
yes, I'm curious to see where it'll go, and it'll be interesting to see if this phase of the MCU will be more about making some of the villains heroes and the heroes villains. Do you know what I mean? Like an exchange of, which Thunderbolts would fit in perfectly to that.
Yeah. I mean, the Thunderbolts. I mean, I think it's now become like a really, like a common theory amongst fans that that's what's going to happen.
Although they've already announced so many shows and films. Is there room for another one in the next year or so? I don't know. I mean, this year's
maybe
already
not the next year, but maybe I'd love if they announced it and started getting it together right now. I don't know if we'll get that because if you look at the way they seem to be doing it, it seems to be like all right, Val's going to turn up, probably here and there throughout the Disney Plus series and the films and things like that, and start collecting bad guys. That's my guess. So it might take a little while to build the team.
Yeah. And
I really want it to happen. I'm desperate for it to happen.
It was interesting to see, John's journey throughout this, and he attempts to move. He kind of moves from hero to villain back to hero again, really. I liked his kind of sort of quasi redemption, but you can still see, he's going to be, the US agent, as Val says at the end. But I kind of I'm curious to see where that journey is going to go.
I think he came out of this series as one of the more interesting characters. It's like so much of your time is spent just like hating his guts, but he's interesting. He's like, he's not predictable. He's a character that I kind of loved to hate. And when he had that moment in this episode where he rocks up to confront Carly, and then it turns into a decision between rescuing a van full of people and going after Carly, he chooses the van full of people. Yeah. And so I think he's a character with different shades. I hope that they're not trying to outright redeem him. And I don't think that's necessarily what they were trying to do, but I think they were trying to show you that he's not just like evil bad guy through and through. He is somebody who makes good decisions and bad decisions, and you never know what he's going to do in the moment.
Yeah. I really loved, I could have done without, I thought Sam's sort of speech when he's talking to the senator was just so on the nose, and it was just like, come on, man, there needed to be another way to do it. And it's a weird thing. It's like, well, I agree with everything you're saying, and I agree completely with the sentiment, but I just felt the way it was done was so kind of heavy-handed, and then that, I think sometimes that's the problem people have when they say politics. What they actually mean is this kind of uncomplicated speechifying, where it's just, if you just do this, like everything will be fine. And it's just like, look, that's really not how life works. And this stuff is difficult. I don't pretend to fully know the ins and outs of politics, but unfortunately, because of borders and economics and things like that, it is very difficult to sort this crap out. And so I found that a little heavy-handed. However, what I think redeemed that moment was Isaiah Bradley's reaction to it, and the scene later on in the Smithsonian. I absolutely loved that.
Yeah, I would agree that the speech with Sam, it's like, yes, I completely agree with it, but it went on too long. It was somebody timed it, it was like 4 minutes long. So it's just like, that is, it's a long time.
And when you're reaching the end of a series or a film or something like that, 4 minutes is an eternity. And it is like, kind of in any kind of screenwriting, it's like, this is too much. And again, I don't have a problem with the sentiment. I don't have a problem with what he was saying, just the way it was said. But I think that kind of hits on the nose what his character is going to be, I guess. and you know how he could become a real kind of force for change. And I like that idea. I really kind of I'm 100% behind that.
Yes, because I think what they've like, you know, kind of made you understand about Sam over the course of the whole series is that he is a person who will try to sort things out, you know, with words, communication before violence at, you know, every possible opportunity. Even with Carly in this episode, when, you know, she was desperate for him to fight back against her, he still was trying to talk to her and get through to her. And I think that's the kind of Captain America that Sam is going to be. You know, which I think was something that, you know, there was some of that going on with Steve as well.
Sure.
You know, that he was not out there to fight people. He was just, you know, he didn't like bullies, and, you know, and that's what he was standing up against. With Sam, I think he comes at it from the perspective of, you know, he's a counselor, and he understands, you know, that, you know, specifically a veterans counselor, and, you know, understands, you know, that, that violence is not the best way to get through to anyone. So you know, I would agree that, like, you know, him trying to talk to the GRC council and convince them with words, you know, that they had the power to make positive change was a good thing, and it works with it, you know, with his character. But yeah, I think it could have been a minute or two shorter. Really, that's my only quibble. Especially because there are things, you know, like looking back on the episode, there are things that I really wanted to see that I didn't get to see. Particularly
when you say looking back, I've just got to know, do you mean watching it over and over again?
Yes, I do not.
Sorry, I had to get that in, Liz. I apologize. Go on. Sorry, there were things you wanted to see. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there were things I wanted to see that I didn't get to see. And it's like, okay, could you have, like, you know, sort of borrowed a minute from, like, you know, like Sam's speech, or like one of the many action scenes at the beginning, or something to give me a nice, like, closure-filled moment between Bucky and Yori. Like, because that scene was like not cathartic for me at all. Like that was like, you know, something that I had really wanted to see the actual conversation between them. And just like when it, you know, when Bucky goes and tells him, like, you know, yes, I was a Winter Soldier, I killed your son, they just cut to nothing, and that was just like done and dusted. And I was like, really? We don't even get to see a reaction. We don't get to see, you know. So that was disappointing to me. I was like, okay. You know, that was supposed to be a big healing moment for Bucky, and I felt like that got really short shrift.
I think in a way it would have been nice if Bucky's, and it kind of almost is, Bucky's storyline is all about him getting to that moment of apologizing. It's like I don't know if you've ever seen the second Jason Bourne film, where you realise at the end the whole film is about him getting to the point where he apologises to the sort of teenage girl because he killed her mother and father sort of many years before, and it's just like, yeah, the whole film's kind of been about that, but you don't realise it to the end, and it's just like, I think that was Bucky's arc, and yeah, so that moment needed a bit more weight and a bit more time, and it's just like, you know, and I don't think people want to be speechified at, like, they're kind of done with that, really.
That was just one example of a scene I thought could have been shorter. I think there were about 25, like, you know, flag smasher scenes that I could have done without, and, you know, would have preferred to spend a minute or two with, like, Bucky and Yori. You know, so it's not just that, you know, it's not just Sam's speech. I just thought that they, you know, they dwelled on certain things, like, you know, for a little longer than they needed to, and then moments that felt more important to me, you know, got like, you know, like we're a little tight, you know, a little rushed. But you know, overall, yes, okay, we got the point in that scene that yes, Bucky like did go, he did what he needed to do, and he did find the closure that he needed. I just would have, you know, as a viewer, liked to experience it with him.
Totally.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, like I said, there's, they had a lot of wrapping up to do, so many plot threads needed to get wrapped up in this episode, which I did think that they managed to do. Like each character, kind of got an ending that I thought was satisfying for them. Like really, when you look at it, like pretty much all the bad guys, got happy endings. To some degree or other.
Well, Zemo's off in prison still.
Well, Zemo's off in prison, but he had my favorite moment of the whole episode, which was, like the Flag Smashers, like, getting into the convoy, and like, one of the guards, like, sort of, shows that he's still loyal to them. One world, one people. It seems like
the Hail Hydra of this series, definitely.
Yep, and it seems like they're just going to go off to the raft and be prisoners, and instead, nope. Kablam! Zemo's butler blows them all to high heaven, and then you just see Zemo on the raft, like reading his book, listening to the news, and as soon as the news, tells him that the Flag Smashers got, blown to smithereens, he just smirks, and he's like, yep, job well done. Even from prison, he's getting his, his work done, and achieving his goals.
Well, that's good. It because he does kind of have a point almost.
He has a very clear idea about what he thinks, is the right way to deal with super soldiers. And, you got to give it to him. Like, he was out of prison for a day and a half, and he managed to destroy the serum, blow away the scientist who created it, and blow up, 4 of the Flag Smashers. Not bad for a day's work. He's
obviously got a lot of resources at his disposal.
This man, he's like the evil Alfred. That is loyalty. What a guy.
But yeah, I'm hoping to see more from Zemo. I don't know how and when they're going to bring him in, but I love him in this kind of milieu and in this kind of world. And I think it might almost be a waste to see him be in a Thunderbolt series where he's not kind of front and center. Do you know what I mean? Like he's like you kind of want him.
As far as the Thunderbolts goes, he is kind of the leader of the team,
right?
Like that's a comics sort of canonical thing. So if he was going to be part of the Thunderbolts, he would theoretically be leading the Thunderbolts. But I would love to see him in in any he could show up in Captain America 4. He could even show up in Black Panther. Wherever they want to put him, I just want to see more, because I loved him in this. I just thought that they, what they did with his character in this series, I just, absolutely loved, and really hope that they, kind of reintroduce him at the soonest possible time.
Yeah, let's hope. Let's hope.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
No,
well, I was just gonna say, bad guys getting their good endings. Walker is happy as a clam. He's got Val on his side. Last we see of Walker is he's got his U.S. agent costume. He's got his U.S. agent title. He's like basically hopping up and down, saying, "I'm back, I'm back." So we're gonna see. We're gonna see more of Walker. Sharon gets like the jammiest ending out of everyone. She's like, managed to totally reposition herself within S.H.I.E.L.D. while also, having, Madripoor under her thumb. I'd be very curious to know who she's been talking to on the phone.
I assumed it was her assistant, the one she got into the car with in episode 3.
Quite possibly, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm just curious to see where it's going to go. I've really enjoyed this series. I'd like to see more in that sort of espionage kind of Marvel world. I hope they do that soon. I do just want to give a quick shout out to, I don't know if you'll be listening. I hope you will be, Paul Taylor, who I bumped into today. Paul Taylor is one of our patrons, and we've been talking about kind of meeting up for a coffee or something for ages. But I did actually bump into him today in town. It was a nice sunny day here in London, so I popped out to get some comics and to meet up with one or two people who I haven't seen in ages because of lockdown. And I was lucky enough to bump into Paul. We had a really nice long chat just about the website and about what he's been up to. So, Paul, it was really lovely to see you today. Like, I really enjoyed it. I hope we can go for a proper sort of coffee or pint soon. And thanks for taking the time to chat today. Very interesting views on comics. He had some stuff to say about things he's reading, and it was great to kind of natter about comics with him. Speaking of nattering about comics, Liz, we're going to take a week off from the show. Obviously, the show's ending, but from videos, you and I, and more importantly, from each other, which is the main thing. So, something I've been looking forward to since we started this journey with One Division. We're going to take a week off, but we will be coming back very soon with our new show. The new show obviously isn't going to be an MCU show because no MCU shows are out. There's not another MCU movie till July. We've got Loki in June, so we're going to talk about comics. There will be some movie and TV stuff in this show. So the new show is going to be called Crushing Comics. We're going to talk about some new releases. We're going to talk plenty about trades. As I've said, there's going to be a little bit about comics, TV, and movies. So do kind of write into us with any questions you've got, or anything you want to say. You want to comment below. But that show should be starting week after next. We think we don't have a day yet. We're working that out. We're kind of doing the fine print now. But that show will be coming back. Hopefully, coming back with Gemma soon for the Comics Touch as well. And of course, plenty more interviews. The interview with Sydney Duncan, who wrote the wonderful Kill Whitey Donovan, is coming up. I am behind schedule, so I haven't put it up yet. Sorry, Sydney. And sorry to anyone who's waiting for that. The interview with Erica Schultz on her new Kickstarter, The Deadliest Bouquet, which launches on the 11th of May, is on this very channel now. So do give that a look, because that was a good, fun interview, and I really had a good time with Erica. She's a fantastic kind of person to talk to about comics, and as I'm sure a lot of you know, a wonderful writer. So do give that a look. Liz, that's up for it for us. Single tear rolls down my cheek as we say goodbye once more.
Oh boy. Yeah,
It's a tear of joy, though.
Yeah. Well, it was it lasted.
Sorry. Yeah. Well, for you at least. I don't mean it. I love doing this every week.
I do too, and I really enjoyed the series on the whole. I have to say, like last words on Falcon and Winter Soldier, I really loved it. I'm gonna watch it, more times, many more times. And even though I had a few little quibbles about this particular episode, I think as a story, it was really ticked all the boxes for me. And I really, I'd love if we got a second season of it.
Yeah, Me too. I like Captain America and the Winter Soldier as we
exactly. Yeah, I love that. I love that.
I love how Sam gets to drop Falcon, but Bucky will never not be the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, I mean, they could have called him White Wolf, but I don't think it has the same ring. I'm happy for him to claim the name Winter Soldier, you know.
And kind of, take it back and do something good with it, I hope. It's been a lot of fun doing this every week. Thank you, Liz, so much for giving up your time to come and do this. I know it's tough for you talking about MCU stuff. I know it's not in your wheelhouse, and you don't really enjoy it, and it's such a chore every week for you.
Yeah,
no, honestly, it's been great fun. Guys, we'll catch you again soon. Remember, check out the Patreon, check out the web store. It all helps us keep going. Follow us at the Comic Crush on Twitter and Instagram. Find us on Facebook, the Comic Crush page. Check out the comiccrush.com website, most importantly, where you'll find a ton of articles and podcasts and everything about comics. Just there's a ton of stuff on there already, and even more coming in the next few weeks. Liz, you can follow at Liz C. Jordan on Twitter, where she will talk to you about the MCU at length.
Happily.
Yeah, and in fact, just won't stop. No, Liz, thank you so much for bringing your kind of deep knowledge and love of the MCU every week. We'll see you guys again soon. Goodbye. We're out. Bye. See you soon.